This is our organ update for the day after St. Patty's Day. So this is the 18th of March, and we find ourselves in the solo division. And our subject today is reed pipes. Organ pipes fall into two big categories. Flue pipes, F-L-U-E, as in what runs up your chimney, and reed pipes. So today we're going to talk about reeds because in the previous weeks we've mostly used flue pipes, which, as John said last week, are essentially whistles. So reed pipes function on an entirely different premise, and John Muller is going to tell us a little bit about how reed pipes work.
So here we have a set of 4 different types of reeds that you find in this organ. I forgot to count, but there's probably as many as 12 sets of reeds in this organ. Reeds are divided up into 2 major groups. There are some reeds that are imitative, which means that they are imitating a particular instrument, such as the clarinet or the French horn. And then there's non-imitative, which are, even though they have similar terms like trumpet, the tone quality is not trying to imitate a real trumpet sound.
They sort of function in the same way that the brass does in the orchestra, though. They have that sort of blazing quality that the brass does. And as John said, they don't exactly imitate the trumpet, but they fill that bill in the big scheme of how the organ tone works.
And just to give a little bit of background, as far as imitative reeds in an organ, this particular set is called a French horn, and it was as history goes, it was originally designed by Aeolian-Skinner, and the story goes that he was at the Symphony Hall in Boston listening to the symphony, and was so taken by the sound of the French horn in the piece of music that he decided to stop at the shop and see if he couldn't design something that sounded similar to or just like a French horn. So this is the example of what he came up with. Very interesting sound. We also have the loudest set of pipes in the organ by far is the tuba. It's very similar to a trumpet in its overall design. It's as you can see, it's conical shaped, and this set is called a flugelhorn, as in the type of trumpet. And then this last set here, this is called the clarinet, and it just so happens that these 4 sets are imitative type reeds. So, how does a reed work? So the air, just like a flue pipe, the air comes into the toe of the pipe. But rather than it being a whistle, we have a vibrating reed inside. So we have a column that's called a shallot. It's a hollow column. And then there's a reed tongue, piece of brass, similar to like a clarinet reed, that when the air comes in the toe, the reed moves back and forth, and then the tone quality resonates up the tube. So you have the shallot, you have the reed tongue itself, and then the tongue is held in place by in this case, a brass wedge. It kind of holds it all together. And then this is the wire, and without getting too complicated, this wire will move up and down, and it changes the pitch, and that works in combination with the resonating length. So this changes the pitch, and it also changes the tonal quality of the reed.
Because the wire, as you can see, is bent so that it presses quite firmly against the reed. So as you move that wire up and down, it changes the vibrating length of the reed. The reed can only vibrate up to that point where the wire is pressing against it. So as John said, that's what changes the pitch, and that's the basic way that you tune most reed stops.
And then one of the things that helps determine the sound quality is the shape of the resonator, but it's also the shape of the shallot. So some shallots are very narrow, so there's an opening that the reed tongue vibrates against. Sometimes the opening is wide open, sometimes it's very narrow, and all these things contribute to the quality of the sound.
Sometimes the shallot has a rounded dome end of it, and that influences the quality of the sound. Almost every factor that you're looking at here is quite deliberate and can be changed depending on what type of sound you want.
The reed tongue can be thicker, it can be curved away from the shallot more, so that it all these things working together changes the tonal quality. Is that?
Yeah, that's the basic premise of it. And one of the fascinating things about reed pipes is that they do come in so many different shapes and sizes. And if you cut any of these pipes off right here, so it didn't have any resonator, it would just be sort of a buzz. Like flute pipes, as we said, are sort of a whistle. Reed pipes would sound a little bit like a kazoo, I think.
Right,
you know,
right,
they're just
yeah.
a really buzzy, not a musical sound that's created by the vibrating reed, and then it's the shape and the length of the resonator that allows that buzz down here to be turned into what our ears hear as a musical sound. And every factor in the shape and length of the resonator is very important in what type of sound you end up with. So whether you've got a clarinet or a trumpet or an oboe or an English horn, there's a huge variety of reed stops, and they're all produced by that same basic premise of the vibrating piece of brass, but everything else is changeable and lends itself to creating this big variety of sounds that are such an important part of the organ tonal picture. So that's just a little bit of elementary introduction to the reed stops.